that she was now. No, Sibel. I'm not gonna laugh at this. This was horrible. This was horrible. He was telling people, listeners, he was telling people that this woman was dead, that she had died. And so whenever she would walk by, he would say, "Oh yeah, no, that's just her ghost." Right? Like this is horrible. This is so bad. This is so bad. He treated her so badly, right? And so another thing, it was just one thing after the other. Their kids, one turned out to be a mad drunk, the other was just a drunk. And it was just really, really bad on the home front. Let's take a quick break, and then we will be back to tell you about possibly the most ridiculous part of the story yet, if that's even possible, right?
I don't know if that's possible.
I don't know, but we will try our hardest to let you know what this guy did. But let's take a quick break, and then we will be right back to tell you what this dude gets up to. Don't go nowhere. We are Hairbrained Schemes. And we are back.
Hello.
Now, Sibel, when you've reached this level of success and you just can't miss and everything's just looking great, you might be tempted, like our friend Timothy Dexter, to start to refer to yourself as Lord Timothy Dexter. No, because why not? Because even though this guy was a fierce American, and things like lordships were relics of the old country,
Loyalty.
Right? He still felt, you know what? The only thing
lord
that would be suitable for me right now would be to be called a lord, right? So he started calling himself Lord Timothy Dexter, and so children in the community, right, whenever they were hungry, they would just approach him when they saw him and be like, "Lord Timothy Dexter, Lord Timothy Dexter," and he would give them money, right? That was a surefire. Yes, yes. That was it was like, "Thank you for using the proper and correct title to address me. Here you go, $1."
I remember reading that he also eventually started referring to himself as an earl of some place as well.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So, this dude, at a certain point, you've seen it all, you've done it all, you're doing great. At a certain point, you start to wonder, what do people really think about me, right? What do people really say about me behind my back? I want to know, right? And so, he had this ridiculous idea of faking his own death. And you know what? The funny thing is, it says about 3,000 people showed up.
3,000 people.
3,000 people showed up. So that must have been extremely gratifying to him because he was watching from behind a curtain or some rubbish like that, right?
And then he hiding somewhere.
And then he looked at his wife and he saw that she wasn't crying sufficiently, right? That she wasn't showing the sufficient amount of grief, right? And he couldn't even wait until everyone was gone. This dude bursts out. Now, imagine yourself as a guest at the funeral.
At a funeral. And the person who is dead bursts forth, pulls out a cane.
Now this part is not funny because he then goes ahead to assault his wife for, quote, not showing sufficient grief, right, at his passing, right? So
in front of 3,000 people.
In front of 3,000 people. Now there's no excuse, right? I can think that this guy is such a G, and I can think that he's had such a charmed life, but the way he treats his wife, no excuse, not funny.
Disgusting.
So he goes ahead to
Disgusting.
He goes ahead to assault his wife in front of all these people, right? And then he then pretends like it was always the plan, and he goes ahead and acts like the party was just a surprise party and everyone should enjoy themselves and stuff, right? Idiot.
Jeez.
Idiot. Absolute idiot, right? And so, you know,
Isn't it
he
crazy at that point in time that caning your wife was legal?
was just a thing. It was just a
legal.
thing.
Yeah,
Was it
yeah.
legal, Sibel, or was he just
I'm
a powerful man?
I'm almost
Was he
certain
just a
it was
powerful
legal.
man who nobody could say anything to? Because I would think that this was also the period where things like chivalry were quite the thing, right? It was a mark of distinction. Are you saying there were no men
Chivalry-
at that funeral that would have said, "Sir, you can't do that"? Like,
No. I'm not saying. I'm
Right.
not saying that it's acceptable. I'm
Okay.
just saying that it was legally allowed. I'm
Right, okay.
fairly
All right.
certain it
Okay.
was legally allowed.
So there was nothing to stop it from happening, is what you're saying, right? Not that it was actively encouraged.
There were
it was
no
just,
legal
there was
repercussions.
nothing. Right. Got you.
No, like she had no recourse. She had no
Right.
protection. I mean,
Right.
society had failed to. Even now, to this day, there.
Right.
I mean, in Pakistan, you can, at least as I last remembered, you could still, I
Sheesh.
quote, lightly beat your wife.
What the heck is lightly? What does that even mean? And how is that?
I don't want to know.
The subjectivity of that. What the heck is lightly beat your wife? What does that even mean?
I don't.
You know, it just tells me that at some point you know that you're wrong and you just don't care, because at the moment where you're writing this down as law and you're saying, oh yeah, let's just say lightly, at that point you have to know that you're talking nonsense, right? At that point you have to know that this is wrong and you just don't care anymore, right?
I hope so.
But
I don't know. Is it? It's I mean, there's other bits of history, like the term. You know where the phrase "rule of thumb" comes from?
where does it come from?
It's very unfortunate. The law was that a man could beat his wife with a cane that was no bigger than his thumb. That
No
is the
fatter
rule of
than
thumb.
his thumb?
No fatter than his thumb.
Wow.
That's where rule of thumb comes from. The rule
I
of
think
thumb.
I'm never going to say that expression again.
Mm-hmm.
I just learned that. That's horrible. That is
Yep.
beyond horrible.
Yep.
But yeah, no, he does this. And so he sees that he has quite the following. And so Timothy Dexter, the man who dropped out of school at the age of 8 and does not know how to write, decided, I have the following. I'm going to write a book. 3,000 people showed up to my fake funeral. I'm going to write a book. And so he writes a book complete with awful spelling, random capitalization of words, and particularly zero, and I repeat, zero punctuations. Exactly.
Not a full stop to be seen. Not a comma. Nothing. Just one long run-on sentence that never ends.
There you go. There you go. And you know what? He starts to give this book out for free to anybody who is just passing about in town. And this book was such a success. This book was such a success.
Possible?
They ordered a reprint, right? They ordered a second print, and they had complained to him, "Oh, sir, you know what's missing? Your book is great. Your book is great. I mean, the random capitalization it throws us off a little bit, but hey, it's great. But you know what's completely missing is the punctuations. If you would just add some punctuations, that would be great." And you know what Timothy Dexter does is he adds a whole page just full of punctuations at the end.
Yeah.
Just at the
Here's
end.
a line of full stops. Here's a line of commas.
Yeah.
Here's a line of exclamation
Like,
marks.
literally,
And please
guys.
tell them what he says.
He says, "Here are your punctuations. Feel free to pepper and salt them across the book as you please." Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
And
Oh,
here's
my
the
goodness.
crazy part. Talking about how he can't miss. This book was reprinted
Yes.
8
times.
times.
8 times.
8 times.
That means it kept selling out and had to be reprinted. Like, it kept selling out and 8 times.
Oh,
It's it defies logic. The simulation is broken. Let's all go home, right? Because this is just ridiculous. And so, you know, he did this. And one more thing we need to tell you about Timothy Dexter was this ridiculous mansion that he built. And Sibel, I know you've been waiting to talk about this. So over to you, my man.
Okay, the house. There's a photo on Wikipedia,
Yeah.
and it just looks ridiculous. Sorry, it's not a photo, obviously, but it just looks ridiculous. And he had a golden eagle in there. He had put up a minaret, which is like a fancy tower from Arabia. And
just because that
there
fits completely into Massachusetts architecture, why
yeah,
not?
it's Massachusetts, New England architecture.
Why not?
That is perfectly at home.
Yeah.
And then he had 40 wooden statues that were painted of
Yeah.
famous historical figures
Yeah.
and himself. And at the bottom of his own, there was an inscription.
Right.
And I need to find the inscription. At the bottom of his statue of himself that said, I am the first in the East.
First in the
I am
East.
the first in the West.
First in the West.
And the greatest philosopher in the Western world.
The greatest. He was Muhammad Ali.
He had a statue of himself in his own garden.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he had this written about
along
himself.
with, and he positioned himself along with, lots of statues of other,
U.S.
accomplished people like George Washington, Thomas
Adam
Jefferson,
and Eve,
Adam and Eve,
Louis the 16th.
Oh yeah. So this dude had no shortage of self-confidence. So I just spied something
narcissism.
again. I just spied something again. On the Wikipedia, and just so I neglected to tell you previously, the title of his book was A Pickle for the Knowing Ones. Right? That was what the book was called.
He was complaining about his wife, the clergy,
he complained about
and politicians.
Politicians, exactly. And one of the so here's the thing. Here's the quote from the book that Wikipedia shares with us. And mind you, all of this is badly misspelled, right? So if you want to see just how bad his spelling was, you have to go check that out. And it says, I'm the first lord of the United States of America, now of Newburyport. It is the voice of the people, and I can't help it, and so let it go. So this was a
What
direct...
does that mean?
He was telling his detractors that you can't stop the flame. He's like, look,
God.
I'm the first lord. There's nothing you can do about it. It's the voice of the people. So let it go. Let it go. Yeah, man.
Timothy was he throwing down a diss track?
That was ether right there. That was the Nos ether, man. So yeah. And then it says
also fun facts. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say how he tried to burnish his own legacy, and he surrounded himself by the most questionable people, including a guy named Jonathan Plummer, who Wikipedia says was a fish merchant and amateur poet. But what Wikipedia neglects to tell you was that our friend Jonathan Plummer was also a renowned purveyor of pornography.
What? What? Oh, goodness.
So he sold porn. That was his job. He would find and sell porn. And he wrote a poem for Dexter, and it says, Lord Dexter is a man of fame. Most celebrated is his name. More precious far than gold that's pure. Lord Dexter, shine forevermore. That was high art, my friend. High art. High art.
Oh, goodness. Oh. And
yeah, man, that is his legacy.
I just remembered other crazy things. So apparently he would hit on women all the time. So like his garden that had all these statues, he would just stand outside.
It was a woman trap.
Incredibly inappropriate. Yeah, it was like a honeypot that he was just trying to like. Oh, and he had a hairless dog that
Yeah.
was always around him.
Yeah.
So he was drunk all the time. So that was also another thing.
Yeah, he never
Oh
did
my
business in the
God.
afternoon because he was always drunk by the afternoon. So all his business he did in the
Yeah.
mornings.
So there was a hairless dog
Yeah,
that was just hanging out. He had this huge hat on,
yeah,
and there was a garden with a statue of himself.
yeah, including of himself. Yeah,
God.
exactly. And speaking of him just completely disrespecting his wife over and over again. So one time he moved to a new neighborhood, and he had to leave there after he'd engaged in so
Getting
much
beat up by the
inappropriate
lawyer?
behavior. He'd engaged in so much inappropriate behavior with so many women in the neighborhood that one day a lawyer just ambushed him